good, mate.
Let's do it. Oh, we are live. There you go. Throwing you onto the bus straight away.
Straight into the deep end.
Yeah, I was expecting us to get go live in a second, but no, we are live. Welcome everybody. Bobby, this is a cross between a podcast and a live LinkedIn live, right? So you have to do a little bit of waiting for people to join, and so there's a little bit of rambling whilst people do come and join. And a bit of spill, so no pressure to start with. Just sit there, relax, get comfortable.
It's the standard 5 minutes past start time of any meeting.
Yeah,
this isn't my
hopefully
first
not
rodeo.
for 5 minutes though, because that would be a really crap podcast if you're making people sit there for the start of a podcast for 5 minutes.
We're all used to it. Everyone's teams is finishing bang on 11. They've got to come off of it. They've got to join the next one. They've got to get a coffee. I mean, it's just how this works.
It's just how it works, right? But hopefully people will begin to join us now. I normally give it 90 seconds, so we've got 30 seconds before we actually get going. If you are here already, thank you for joining us. If you aren't here already, where the hell are you? But please do get involved. Get involved in the comments. Ask some questions, because I always believe that your questions are probably better than mine. You're in the moment, understanding the challenges more than I am, and so yeah. Please do get involved. Just say hi as well. Like if you're here just now listening, say hi. Tell us who you are and where you're listening from. You know, like Bob saying hello to his mum. Come on already.
Does she actually come on?
I don't know. I don't know. Someone said real chill Bobby, and I'm not sure who that is because I can't see it. But can you write your name in just so I know who I'm talking to? Because sometimes this happens, it comes up with LinkedIn user rather than the name. All right, let's get going, shall we? Bobby,
go for it.
This is the first time I've had a proper out of work friend on my podcast, and so we're going to hopefully keep this professional as much as possible, but have a bit of banter here, there, left, right, and centre. We won't talk about your boxing career. As I promised to Natalie. So Natalie, if you're here already, apologies. But we won't go into that too much. But look, I'm very lucky to have a friend who works in L&D and has worked all the way up into a very important area of L&D, who can share some really great knowledge around building L&D strategies. Richard from Essex.
Richard from Essex. Richard Barrett. Of course it is.
Yeah.
He's looking after me throughout the whole ordeal, so that'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Richard, please tell us if he's lying about any of this. Please tell us. And Tara, thank you for joining. But yeah, I'm very lucky to have Bobby on, sharing all this knowledge. He's obviously a good friend as well, so excited to see how this goes as well. But look, I know who you are. Some of the people here know who you are, but the rest of the world don't. So could you just give me an introduction? Tell me who you are, what you do.
Of course. The rest of the world is quite ambitious, but I mean, whoever's tuned in, I'll give you a little bit of a synopsis of my background. So Bobby Mann, 15 to 16 years. I'm trying to forget the volumes as we enter into double figures in learning and development. I've really kind of spent that time in financial services and professional services, done my time kind of in the classroom, kind of churning out inductions, customer service routines. I joined and I started in learning and development because actually it was a really good space for me to soft influence organizations and grow businesses. I think there can be a stereotype around learning teams that we're a nice to have, and I think I've spent 15 to 16 years really playing into that. And kind of using it to my advantage to soft influence his business, who may not necessarily expect much, but then it gives me the platform to be quite ambitious and actually work with them and move the business in a sensible direction. Sometimes working operationally, there's the heavy focus on the KPIs and there's not too much interest to kind of maneuver past those. So when you're in a learning team, you can really have that that soft coaching, mentoring, and operational challenge kind of feel to your conversations when you're talking to the business to help them grow. And I've seen a lot of examples throughout my career where that's really kind of paid dividends for both me and the business. So spent a lot of time working around understanding the businesses, understanding the economies of the businesses that I operate in as well. People like, Richard Barrett that are on the call, he taught me that. Understand the business that you come from. and that you're working in to really kind of help with your learning frameworks when delivering it as well. So I've worked big four, I've worked small bank, big bank, any type of financial services really. I've been the classic just seconded into a training role just to can you fix it. I've also kind of been part of teams of up to 40, 50 people, worked global teams, been sent all over Europe and Asia to run big milestone events for big professional services. So seen it all, heard it all. Not a know-it-all, I promise. I wouldn't be a learning professional if I wasn't to say I'm always open to learning. So as confident as I may sound, I'm really open to challenge, and any thoughts to your point, any questions that people have got where, people are saying, not quite sure where you're coming from with that one, Bobby, or don't agree with you, happy to hear it, happy to debate it, because that's how we grow, that's how we learn, right?
Yeah, we've all heard the Bobby debate.
No comment.
And, listening to that, right, like knowing you, the L&D, I think fits you perfectly with the energy you have, the way that you can communicate. I think it's such a strength in you to be able to go into that industry as well, right? We talk about it from sport. Sometimes you have to find the right sport for you to excel at, and I feel like that's potentially something you've done. You found the job and the role that allowed you to excel a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm paid to stand in front of a classroom and talk, or on a webinar. People are asking for an opinion, asking for a view, and actually facilitating conversations and letting people do that now, I think is really, really nice to see. The art of facilitation is not necessarily me soapboxing, as much as I love it, and I really do. Having the opportunity to kind of just throw a provocative question out there. And just watch the conversation unfold, and direct it in a conversation of conclusion, not where I'm happy, but where the audience is happy, that's what they're going to take away from it. I think it's a bit of me. I enjoy it, and I enjoy seeing that happen.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? Look, as you said, right, you've worked across a variety of different roles, big, small, high stakes kind of professions or industries. What's been the most significant lessons you've learned building those capabilities or building these strategies around L&D?
I think more so now than ever, I think it's that reminder that change isn't new. It isn't anything that's just turned up. The hot topics right now and the buzzwords are AI, and I know you're going to talk about that at some point. But change has always been a thing. If we talk around 2015 and 16 and the digital disruption, and the being blockbustered, this was the conversation of the time. What happened to Blockbuster? You had people out of industry kind of taking over industries. Uber came in. They don't own a single taxi, but they dominate logistics, kind of in that sense. You've got Netflix. You've got Airbnb, don't own a single hotel, but they're dominating in that hospitality space. And so throughout time, it's always been there. And the example I always use in training environments is the horse and plow farmer. Everyone thought that the tractor coming in, was going to take jobs away and it was going to destroy things. What it did is it just transitioned skill set, right? It made everything far more efficient and effective to deal with the capacity needs of the world that we was moving into. What it did mean is that the skill set changed. So we had farmers that were probably quite adept at being borderline first line veterinarians, farriers, because they were changing horseshoes, they were troubleshooting the illness of a horse, they was looking at the kind of mechanics of a plow. But now we've transitioned, and what time has told us is that the scale of industry attached to the motor trade has created more opportunity for anybody. So I think the lesson over the last 15 years is change isn't anything new. It's always going to be there, and learning and development teams are inherently agile. And I use that with a small a, not capital A. Agile, the verb, not the noun, which again, we've packaged agile, as opposed to saying we're constantly evolving, we're constantly moving. We always have been, we always will be, and business priorities will always change. So I think my lesson is about kind of reflecting on that point and accepting that change is inevitable. And equally, we're not the first generation to start experiencing it just because we've got something new and shiny that's being packaged for us right now.
Yeah. Was there a moment when you look back and go, oh, that was when I realized that?
I think it was my time in big professional services, if I'm honest. What you're realizing is that even they have their internal challenges, and they have their internal battles of how to kind of culturally drive their business and their somewhat 350 or 1,000 people. How do you scale that level of people to kind of buy into a message? And the whole principle was not saying I'm technically great at what I do. It's actually having an ethos about how do I understand what other people do and how do I apply what I'm good at to them. And that was what really epitomized and kind of shaped my attitude, taking it into kind of the next roles where I built functions and worked with great people like Richard to build these functions up. With this ethos that we're going to be going from here to here to here, kind of throughout this entire journey. And how do I map that? And how do I plan for it?
Yeah. We'll go back to the concept of change, right, and bring it into like an L&D strategy concept. So with the fact that change is always constant and always there, and his case, we know it's going to get more often with the intelligence of AI. How do you build a strategy around it? How do you build a good L&D strategy? What does that look like?
So I think in part it comes to mindset, and if you look at and people hate me using this because I use it all the time, but it's the maybe kind of approach, and it's how do you create stability and not getting kind of hung on a particular concept kind of throughout the tenure of your project. And it's the old fable of a farmer buys his boy a horse, and everyone go, oh wow, that's amazing, and the grandmaster says, yeah, maybe. And then the boy rides the horse, he falls off the horse, he breaks his leg, and they go, oh, how sad. And then the grandma says, yeah, maybe. And then the army turns up and they're shipping everybody off. Boy can't go because he's got a broken leg. And everyone goes, oh, that's great. Again, yeah, maybe. And I think for me, everything that I build in a strategy kind of works on let's not blow this out of proportion, and let's not get too down about kind of where this goes or where it heads, because fundamentally we need that level head based on the change of direction. You can have a 5-year plan, which a lot of people did in 2019, and then COVID's going to completely change that, right? You're going to have big professional services firms transacting, merging big clients and saying, oh, learning and development, just do something like training hours as your board stat. Okay, great idea. Until you talk about the fact that you qualified that as face-to-face hours, but now we've just hit a disruption where none of us can do that. We're going to accelerate our move into virtual, and as a result of that, now that board stat's completely irrelevant. So where are we having that conversation about maturing and evolving that stat so that we can grow with the times? So I think to your point, how I build that strategy is kind of to be agile, not to be fixed, but it is equally to document and clarify what has been asked for. What are we asked for? What's been challenged, and what do we need, and how do we need to direct it? And fundamentally, that comes for me in the form of a skills matrix, and it comes in the form of what are the common development levels of a particular role. So where am I performing well at a skill level, not at a business performance level? How am I performing against resilience? How have we mapped that out? And equally, how then have you shaped what skills are relevant for your business at that specific time, and how do you evolve that kind of throughout? So again, without going kind of too in depth, and I'll let you kind of ask some more questions on it, it's really kind of focusing on what are the skills that's relevant, and how's that going to change and evolve over time is where I kind of lean into without anything too kind of broad.
And is that what I want to understand? Because as you know, I've not been in organizations, I've been on the outside supporting. When we think about like a strategy around L&D, what needs to be in there? Is it just looking at skills and then what needs to change, or is there what are the key pillars or concepts that you need to think about when creating a strategy? What's a good strategy look like?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm not looking away because I'm just looking at my notes, but I think fundamentally you're looking at some core principles when you're building any sort of framework. It's your introduction and purpose. Why are you doing this? It's your departmental structure. How is this going to work with how your organization is structured? Are you hierarchical, or are you a matrix organization? How do you operate, and how are you going to make it work? You've got your recruitment and onboarding. How are we going to work with that? Because again, some of the biggest frustrations is you bring people on and then all of us, not pointing at any specific function, it's just examples through time, but oh, Bobby, we've just taken on someone in compliance. Okay, great. Have you got anything on Excel training? How long have they been with the business? Oh, this day 2. Okay, what? And is it on their job description that they needed this skill? Yes. Okay, so I'm not here to fit a skills deficit that we chose to risk accept. Why have you taken someone on that can't fulfill the role and then asked an internal training team to kind of pick up, because we're already on the back foot? So I think recruitment and onboarding is really important, and it's really important for us to work together in understanding kind of what we're bringing on, or what that development plan looks like, and why that's been accepted. You then got stages of competence. So what does good look like? And again, it's not linking it inherently to performance management. So I could be great. I just turn up, I do my 9 to 5. I'm quality at what I do. I've got no aspirations to kind of be promoted, but I do want to be recognized for being a subject matter expert in a specific area of the business. How do you distinguish that through stages of competence? And that for me is really key and really important. It's then you look at kind of things like quality control pieces, like what happens if people leave the business for it might be maternity leave, it might be for extended periods of absence, career breaks. How are you supporting them when they come back in? What are your remedial loops for when people fail some of your competency stages, or what's required to kind of say, this is what you need in order to do your job, in order to meet that criteria. So for me, these are some of the components that you would need kind of in a framework in order to kind of really understand what it is that why you're building training content. Not just, can you do sales training? Oh yeah, sure. You're not going to get return on investment unless you understand why it intrinsically links to the benefit of your business.
Yeah. It seems like it's thinking about the business as a whole rather than just the learning of the people that you're dealing with, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, is that we don't need to make a cottage industry out of learning and development. And I do see it a lot in learning professionals. We want to say that we're our own industry. We are an operational enabler. We enable operations to succeed. I'm here to champion the business's growth. Now, there's lots of learning models that I would say, I would use 70-20-10, for example. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I think you've gone through it with me.
Yeah, perfect. So with the 70-20-10 model, that's my preferred, but that really relies on a business being able to provide quite, robust data, which a lot of the time isn't available to kind of performance monitor once they've left the training environment. But
Can you just share, just whilst you're on that, can you just share the 70-20-10 so people who maybe don't know it know it?
Yeah, of course. So 70-20-10 kind of is that breakup of where people spend their learning time. So it argues that 90% of the learning that you do is experiential. And so that's made up of the 70 and the 20%. So the 10% is actually the training intervention that me or my team would undertake. So it might be an e-learn, it might be a face-to-face session, something of this description. And then the 20% of the tools and resources. So this might be a cheat sheet. It might be an intranet page that houses something, because when you consider the knowledge fade, I don't know what the percentage is. I'm sure there's people on this screen on the call yelling at me what that percentage is, but there is a large percentage of how much of that information you're going to lose the minute you leave that room. Reinforced by the fact that you're not going to use it immediately the minute you leave it, you're going to lose that quite quickly. And so what are your tools and resources that you're going to have so that I can recall it when required, and not have to go through another 1 hour session in order just to refresh? So you can pull on that when you need, and then the 70% is you actually doing the job. So if it's customer service, I've gone in and done my 10% customer service, kind of 1 hour training. I've then gone in my 20%. Here's my acronyms and my core models that I should be following, cheat sheets on the intranet. And then the 70% is the experience where a customer calls up and goes, I'm not happy with you. And then my customer service kind of kicks in and I start using some of these frameworks. And that's where I feel out kind of how I can use them practically. So the 70-20-10 model for me acknowledges the fact that 90% of our learning is done through doing. And I think sometimes learning functions can really overplay the 10% because there's an element of insecurity about the fact of justifying our existence, because we're made to feel at times that we're a nice to have, as opposed to a need to. And equally, that then leads to people feeling that they've got to justify their existence. Whereas I think, going back to the original point, my aim with a learning function is to professionally challenge an organization to say, why am I here? You've brought me in. Why have you brought me in? And it's having that confidence to say, if you don't need me, don't have me. But I can guarantee you do need it, because most of the time we're not putting a focus on skills in the way that we should.
Yeah, I think that moves me into the next bit really nicely. Where do you see L&D currently sitting in organisations, and do you think it's got like a proper stable seat at the executive table, or is it still fighting for it?
I don't think it's got a stable seat at the executive table, and I think there's a really important piece to say that should it. So I think the champions of this message are our CPOs, the chief people officers, the COOs, the chief operating officers, and the CROs. I've seen job adverts for chief learning officer, and as much as that would play into my vanity to have that as a job title and sit on an executive table, actually I think the traditional kind of build is more valuable, because it means you're better integrated into the business. A lot of the time, my roles are brought in by HR directors and CPOs, and they're already trying to kind of fight a culture of hierarchy. They're trying to kind of embed a learning culture themselves, and so because of that, I think the seat of the table is directed through the buy-in of the CROs, the CROs, and the CPOs, and that's where I think the importance is. No, I don't think we're there yet, realistically, because I think we see learning functions being run by, I've had learning functions run by CFOs, for example. I've had it run by chief of staffs, HR directly. It can be quite bitty, and it goes back to where I started originally. The agility of a learning person that can come in and treat the role as, I'm going to be the perfect middle person to kind of sit here and be the soft influence, understand the business, work my way around the business, understand it, and actually say, these are my observations. This is where I think we need to spend our time. That's where I think the influence comes. And then you're sending your CPOs, CROs, and HRDs kind of back into the executive room to say, here's the information, here's the data. Consider yourself informed. What do you want to do about it?
Yeah, I'm now seeing tons of different. Yeah, that role is that kind of audit strategy piece, and then you've got your minions underneath it doing the delivery.
Can we use the word minions?
But I use the word minions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd ever refer to someone I'm working with as, and they all know that I'd love to get in the training room if I could anyway. I think it's about reflecting on what is it you're trying to do. And I see this kind of play out all the time in the regulatory space. I guess throughout my career, I've had a lot of comfort in the stability of my role because I work regulatory content. And again, it's not because I know I'm safe. It's because I know how people fear the regulatory angle of it. And so their attitude is, I have to have it, as opposed to, I want it. And so again, I've already got my foot in the door with, you have to have it. So it gives me that comfort to be a bit more challenging. So when someone says that, I just need you to look after the regulatory schedule. One, I'm not going to just look after anything. I'm going to make sure that it kind of fits the bill. And what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of focus on user experience, as opposed to, why are we actually doing this in the first place? I go into a lot of organizations, certainly at the financial services level. I do their financial crime e-learnings, and I come out and I go, right, one, I got through that in 5 minutes. Why was I able to kind of jump through? Two, where was the adaptive approach? Where was I able to kind of go through the assessment and it tell me what I needed, not what I had to kind of go through for the 20th time? But also, where are the questions that, why are we asking these questions? If we're just ticking a box, I'm doing a financial crime e-learn, and that financial crime e-learn can't even tell me who my money laundering reporting officer is. What was the point? I've got people coming in day one, lambasted with e-learn, and they can't even tell me who. Sorry, say that again.
potentially tons of it, and so there's a lot of information to recall and remember. And yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's all box ticking, and actually you see a lot of publishing capabilities now where you don't have to. You've got a lot of adaptive options. Why don't you test only first? Because actually, if you're curating your own question bank, one, this is the signal from the business. This is what I want to know, and two, the data that you're providing is the question bank performance. These are the really important things for CPOs and executives to see. If you've just spent 1,000 operational hours, I'm assuming you've got quite a large kind of employee base for 1,000, but let's say you've just spent 1,000 operational hours going through an e-learn, even at the 5 minutes that people are pacing through it, they're then doing a test. And that test is telling me that they still don't know who your money laundering reporting officer is. Why? Because you've just bought an off-the-shelf financial crime module just to tick a box. Don't do it. The regulator's not going to give you a pat on the back for saying that you've done an e-learn. They're still going to do an audit. They're still going to say insufficient training. So your energy is better spent actually doing something meaningful. Do a standard off-the-shelf e-learn to give you an indication of where to focus. Okay, X, Y, Z is where they can't. Do a virtual roadshow that has your money laundering reporting officer talking about these elements that is able to answer it for you, because that's where you're going to get your engagement. So, to the point, which I think I've kind of gone slightly off track here, the point around kind of the why. Don't do something for the sake of doing something. Don't do something just to justify your existence. The why is, here's the data, you've asked for it, this is what it's telling you, what do you want to do about it?
Yeah. I'm just gonna go back to something you said earlier on, right? Talking about the nice to have, right? We I think L&D, and especially on my side of things, seem to be a nice to have for organizations.
Sometimes it's a self-perpetuating attitude. I think we've got to take accountability in our own space to say that we sometimes create that attitude. What it boils down to for me is where the business is lying. So what you tend to find is if a business is quite risk averse, this is where they're quite keen to spend money on learning. And you normally see it when there's regulatory scrutiny. I saw it many times over the years where when the FCA first came in, I was working payday lending. Any excuse to get rid of payday lending, justifiably. Terrible product, did not work as advertised. But the point nonetheless is that there was a lot of investment of, Bobby, can you kind of, can you really focus on the training and the training competency and the demonstration of competency? Yeah, sure. And then what happens? You get businesses move into more risk tolerant eras. Why? Because they've gone through COVID, they've gone through economic crashes, they've gone through so many different things that really hit the books. They're not getting rid of us because how do we cut the business back? They're getting rid of us because what they're saying is we're more risk tolerant now, and so therefore we're prepared to take the risk of a skills deficit whilst we just hit the numbers on the KPI in order to get ourselves back to where we want to be. That's, for me, is the experience. I'm not taking it personally that it's a nice to have. It's about reflecting on the fact that they prioritize, but whatever their risk frameworks are telling them to kind of lean in on, that's where they're leaning in. Obviously, as a learning. Sorry, go on.
I was just going, what's the risk to that?
I think, like anything, and a learning folk will kind of be an evangelist to this point, that the skills is what's going to get you there anyway. So it's sort of a biting your nose to spite your face. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to kind of take kind of learning out of it. Okay, but now you're back to where you started. You started because you wanted growth, and because you wanted growth, you wanted to put some energy into skills. And now that you put that energy into skills, it's sort of that cyclical routine of the 7-year complacency. You brought something in to make a change. It's made a change, but then after 7 years, we've got so used to it that we get complacent. We go, it'll be fine. We take it out, and then what happens? You see kind of increases in leavers. You see people getting really unhappy at end of year reviews. You're seeing that managers can't articulate what skills are for their employees. They can't articulate how they're performing or how they are recognised in a certain skill set. And then again, the cycle continues.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because because you started this with the one thing you've noticed most is the amount of change, right? And so to me, I go, if there's a bunch of change, there should always be learning or skills to be learning.
100%.
And so
100%.
in theory, the 7-year thing shouldn't 7-year how did you phrase it? 7-year
7-year complacency.
complacency shouldn't really happen, because there should always be something new that we need to be learning, the teams need to be learning, the people need to be learning. So what are we missing in our ability to show the importance of that?
And I think this is where the conversation of being kind of a skills-based organisation or skills-led. You know, the challenge around these topics is that the skills change too quickly. And I would challenge that slightly, because I'd say a lot of people that will argue that probably can't articulate the skill themselves that they're looking for already. You know, a good example is that, you know, I'll come in and they will say, I want this training because this person's terrible. They don't normally use the word terrible. It's normally some form of expletive, because they want to impress me that they're just going to swear at me because, you know, they're big and strong and they're the hierarchy. But then all that really kind of tells me is that I've already got a management development issue, in that, okay, you're using expletive as an alternative to the fact that you can't actually define the skill that you know is a problem. And so that 7-year complacency kind of happens is because too much of a dedicated focus on, you know, KPI or numbers or business growth, as opposed to the ingredients of success, which is the skill. And they're the controllables, absolutely. And if you've got your teams working across some core competencies, some role-specific competencies, behaviorals, and technicals, you're constantly able to pinpoint where the failing points are. You're constantly able to evolve it based on need. But actually, if you make them broad enough, take resilience, for example, if you make the definition of resilience broad enough for your organization, it doesn't have to change that much. You're always going to need resilience in your competency framework. So how are you demonstrating it, and how do you expect your different layers across the organization to demonstrate it? So again, the reason why I've had success in the frameworks that I deliver to is because, one, try not to force too much change, you know, in the actual framework itself, evolve it as it needs, but also don't over prescribe it, right? So give people a library that's relevant to them, evolve it as it needs to, but don't start if you've got an organization of, I don't know, 200 people and you've got 100 different roles. One, I'm sure kind of a HRD is already having kittens at the idea of how they're going to restructure this so they can kind of limit that. But you've then got 100 different competency maps, as opposed to having a sensible job family architecture that says, you know, skills A, skills B, skills framework C. This is how you record it, observe it, monitor it, look for it, and this is where you interact with the learning team to say, I've got a bit of a deficit in the resilience, specifically around how people are adapting. You know, my entry level roles, they're not very good at adapting, but what I have got is I've got a good number of seniors who are good at responding to kind of change. It's how do I bridge that gap, and that's where the training need then comes in. So I think, to your point, being a bit more skills focused will allow you to actually really pinpoint the real issues, as opposed to going, my numbers are dropping, why? It's what's the skill deficit that you're losing or missing or depleting that is causing
or not keeping up to date with.
Exactly.
Right. I think when we get into, I've got one other question, but then we'll get into like the future bit. And this is making me think about, because obviously I come from my space, and I probably forget from the L&D space, there is a bunch of your LMS, right? Your learning management systems, your e-learning, the stuff which I just see L&D as learning and development, and I see it as everybody's training, delivering bits, but actually some of that is creating e-learning and quick, simple self-learning spaces, right? So where do you combine, or what's the best strategy around that LMS e-learning stuff where people are self-paced versus training versus coaching, and that, how do you see that combining?
So I think the organization picks the learning management system based on kind of what it needs and what it's looking for. Again, I've been into very kind of compliance-led environments where they're using compliance leading learning management systems. They're not particularly great user experiences, and they're very kind of push systems. I can't go into a library, I can't look, I can't see. I just get sent an email going, do this. Not a particularly good experience, but one very typical of a compliance-led environment. You get a lot of other learning experience platforms now, which, you know, the buzzword and the phraseology is, you know, everyone wants the Netflix. Yeah, we all want the Netflix feel, but you've got a PlayStation 2 budget, mate. So you've got to balance it.
And also people maybe aren't interested either. Like
No.
Netflix was successful because people wanted to watch movies at home without the cost, right? And people don't care. Some people don't care about compliance and having to do a regulatory piece of work, right?
But again, we're not horizon scanning the problem, right? Because if I asked, if we took it out of a learning environment, we talked about Netflix, and we talked to a generation that understood having 4 channels back in the day. Then we went into Sky where we had 900 channels, and now we've got Netflix where we've got access to everything. You've got what you wanted, and now what's happened? If I asked anybody about Netflix, they will tell me that they doom scroll on the sofa most days with their partner at the end of the day because they don't know what to watch because there's too much option. So this is where it leads into the curation. You know, skills mapping and playlists are what's fundamentally going to be linked to whatever these core competencies are that sit behind it. So it's all very well and good saying, oh, because you did this, Bobby, you might like this. Okay, but that might not fit with actually what the business needs. It's not necessarily about what I want. It's about kind of what you may need, and how do I know what I need unless somebody tells me. And so for your learning management selection, actually I tend to look at the capability to play with the back end. So if you look at the big and the shiny ones, and you know the magpie effect, when everybody goes, oh yeah, but they're most expensive and they're market leading. Yeah, okay, doesn't mean that I can tweak the back end well enough for my individual tailored needs as a learning professional. And actually, what do I want? I want an editable learning record store. I don't want to be told that these are my only options for reporting. You take some providers, they give you a lot more accessibility on what you can pull from the behaviors of your e-learns, for example. Not just about curation, you know, it's about how much data can I pull out of this, how much behavioral information. It's also can it handle certain publishing. So you'll have your typical SCORM packages, but there's also the XAPI packages. Now, XAPI packages do a lot more external communication with your learning record store that tells me all sorts of verbs and actions that a user has done. How long have you spent on a video? How long have you spent on this slide? How did you answer this interaction? How did you answer the XYZ? And that allows me to kind of digest a lot more information and talk about behavior economics in the e-learn as opposed to box ticking. And then I think the final point on learning management system for me is about extended enterprise. This isn't talked a lot, you know, in the industry at all, but actually when you look at a large proportion of businesses kind of consultative models, you look at how they want to interact at a marketing level with their learning management system. Having an extended enterprise arrangement in your contract allows you to build learning content for your clients as well. So you can sign them up or hit, you know, just go on this link and this will give you a short brief intro, but it also gives you an intro and the reporting capabilities behind it. And that extended enterprise and use of your licenses, both internally and externally, is a fantastic marketing tool to bring skills and learning to the forefront of your business, not just focusing internally.
So that's very much the LMS section, right? So how do you combine those other 2 elements to this?
All LMSs will have your capability to host both face-to-face events. So you'll have the event management tools kind of that sit within them. You'll be able to kind of integrate with Teams or WebEx or whatever your conference platform is. So you can run the events so that it push notifies to users. It records attendances, all of these pieces. So technology fundamentally packages everything that you do. You know, businesses tend to kind of bring the human in first and go, I'm going to bring somebody in and I'm going to get them to do all the manual stuff, all the face-to-face, but it's so arduous. We're talking about AI, cutting time to build learning content, but we've still got people that are coming in doing manual processing of, through Outlook invitations to face-to-face events. You had the technology, 15 years ago in learning management systems. You're not using it. You're now coming into AI, and we're still not using it, effectively. And you've seen a lot of authoring tools. They're now putting an £800 extra fee on top of the same service that they was providing, but calling it AI, and expecting me to just go, yeah, right, here you go. No. I've used your system long enough to know that just because your system can take my PowerPoint slides and turn it into an e-learn, you've always been able to do that. So you need to articulate to me who you're selling it to, what's the difference. And most of the frontline sales folk can't do that. And so how it all brings it together is it has the capability to do whatever you want it to do, as long as you select a learning management system that has the capability to work with someone technically capable to adjust based on your business needs. But some of the more expensive ones, they tend to be a little bit more rigid on the back end because they don't need to change. They've already got people paying the money. They've already got people paying the premiums. Why put the risk in there of someone mucking around with your system and your back end?
Yeah, fair. I want to look at the future, right? And we obviously can't predict it, but we know AI is coming, and it's here, and it's coming, but it's growing pretty quickly. What does the future of L&D look like for you? Where do you see L&D going?
I mean, AI is doing me a massive favor, taking out design, build time of content. This is some of our biggest struggles. 10 years ago, I was bringing in graphic designers instead of instructional designers because they're technically more capable at asset design, kind of in PowerPoints, kind of in e-learns. I'm not very good at creating imagery. I would like to think I'm a good facilitator in the face-to-face arena, and I know how to kind of pull content together to make it engaging and digestible. However, when it comes to kind of painting that picture, actually graphic designers were able to do that a lot quicker. So we've always looked for the quicker solution, and AI is now doing that for us. But what AI is never going to do for us is be able to troubleshoot and look to see that it's on point with the message that I've created. That will always be there. And this goes back to the horse and plow farmer analogy, right? So there is going to be an industry that's created around AI, and I'm going to work with AI in order to expedite how quickly I can go to market or go to market internally with my product. But the focus on quality control is going to go through the roof. And we see that every day, whether it be Instagram, whether it be propaganda in the news, whatever it is, we can all spot kind of AI generated things a mile off. It will improve, it will get better, and it will keep going. But ultimately, it's still delivering a message that you're asking for. And so the biases of AI is it's still kind of telling you what you want to hear. But how does it know? It can't read your mind yet, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, but I also see it from companies are going to begin to implement this a lot more, right? And so, from an L&D standpoint, a lot of that training is going to be change readiness.
Still there?
Yep. Can you hear me, Bob? Hello.
I'm back. I think
You're
that was
back.
me.
Yeah, fair.
I'm back.
I wasn't sure at a moment.
I had the spinny whirl of death, and I realised it was me. You can probably see a little bit of a blushing routine right now, where I was just like, "Oh God, what's happened?"
What's going on with the Wi-Fi?
What was your question? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're thinking about AI and thinking about AI readiness, right? It's how can organizations or L&D strategies be conscious and useful of AI to make sure that they are not only just helping them create things, but actually supporting organizations. Because I feel like the L&D space has an opportunity here to support companies be AI ready or future ready.
I think one of the things that we've always been conscious of is cybersecurity. I think, open access information where you're just pumping and dumping stuff into ChatGPT to kind of rework. Um, Very cautious if you're tailoring content. Make sure you've got your business consent beforehand, because if you're putting business sensitive information in from a public limited company, a public company, that can have huge ramifications if the source that you're using can kind of give away information or give access to people. So I think cybersecurity is really, really important. I think we should be open and allowing people to use these platforms on the basis that you have that cyber protection and that security piece in place, because we can see the pace. I mean, all we've got to do is look at that kind of wonderful bio that you gave me kind of in this. I've been in too many pubs with you, Mr. Turner, to know that ChatGPT helped you with that one.
Yeah, and
It does it for all of us, right?
Yeah.
I'm back.
You're back. Yeah, Bob, I think, have you got your Wi-Fi? You got your phone on your Wi-Fi?
I haven't. I'm just texting the good lady to come off of the internet, because I somehow feel there's an Instagram doom scrolling going on downstairs. So apologies. It's definitely me. How much of that did you get from me?
Not much.
Okay, where was I when it went?
Ooh, good question.
Now the test's on you, my friend.
Yeah, how much was I listening? I think I've been thrown off by you going. Go again.
What was we talking about?
AI readiness.
Yeah. So as I say, from the cybersecurity, it's about allowing people to play in that space, but making sure that you've got that security protection between how much information you're going to share with it, but also not letting it be a surrogate for defining your message. I've talked a lot about this around kind of AI as a conditioning tool that's going to really kind of take your skills deficit and really kind of blow that out of the water, and you're really going to lose some really capable skills if you're constantly relying on ChatGPT to define your message. And equally, if you're not scrutinizing, what it's writing, what it's sending back, you have a real credibility issue if you get caught using it. So it's not about I've used it and therefore I've caught you use it. That's a problem. It's I'm using it to speed up what is actually quite a kind of hard build process and quite a lengthy one. And so I can cut all of that out, but I need to spend my time in the quality control. Have to. Because if you don't, you are going to send pictures out with cars merging into one another, people with kind of six fingers. But equally, you're going to send messages out that are complete distortions or wrong to the point that you're trying to make. And you're seeing this more and more in case studies that are coming out from every sized organization. Even the big players, the big four, the big fives, the magic circles, they are all going to fall foul to this if they are relying on it solely, if they're not checking their work. And you will see that AI at the moment is not intelligent enough to fully understand the data towards an objective or a goal that you're looking for and you're looking at. And I think it's dangerous to rely on it, but it's important and fundamental to work with it.
Yeah, I think it's working with it from a few angles, right? As you said, the build, the creation, the ability to bounce ideas off of it, to gain research, to gain information. There's so many areas to be able to use it well, but you have to understand the human interaction to it, but also the human role within an organization and within the work you're doing, especially as L&D, right? I think people are still hold accountable, still engaged more by a human being. And so I think that's going to be an important part in understanding what that means for L&D people.
I think as well, what's really important, and what I found, I think it was in 2015, I found the Google, I think it's called Google Power Search, and it's a little free online course of how to help you kind of really hone in your search for what you're looking for. It was really powerful because what it did is it stopped me relying on single source information. And what you tend to see is a lot of academics will know this like the back of their hand anyway, because they're always citing their source. They've always got kind of their their sources cited, they know where they've got their information from, and they've made and interpreted their own opinions from what they've created. Those of us that have kind of born through experience, sometimes we need this reminder that actually, if we go to Google or ChatGPT and just ask it a question, we have to kind of consider what its sources it's pulling from, what bias is it leaning into in order to answer that question. And so we have to kind of use multiple sources in order to verify. And I've even had that when I've run teams. I'll have people, so and so's done this. Okay, are you going to go on record on that, and we're going to use you as the source? No, I'm not saying anything. Okay, well, nothing's going to happen then. I will wait until I've heard it, 2 or 3 times from multiple sources before I can actually step in and go, actually, there's a problem here. I'm going to do something about it. There is a fundamental or a systemic issue. But just ChatGPT telling me one thing does not make it true. Might very well be, and it is very helpful to cut through a lot of noise, but you've still got to verify it. So quality control is so much more important, I think, in an AI world.
Yeah, completely agree. Just going to begin to round this out, man. I've got a couple of questions for you. For if somebody is in an organisational kind of context at the moment, looking to transform or make some serious changes and improve their L&D position. Obviously, it's difficult because it's not a unique position. But what's the key things that you would give advice around when looking to improve their L&D process or strategy?
I think it's listen to your business, and I don't mean listen to kind of the loud voices. I think it's listen to the message and the culture that they're trying to portray. Be an ambassador for their brand. So how does your learning framework or what your learning strategy is going to do, how does that support the brand? Not necessarily kind of what the people are shouting, because a lot of the time those two pieces are at odds. It's what are you trying to achieve for your brand, and how will that support it? And equally, talk to everybody. Just because I say one thing does not mean it's going to work for the business that you're in. And I think it's taking multiple views and building something that is fundamentally tailored for your business, your organization. The one thing that I've seen all the time is new faces come in and go, this is wrong, that's wrong, shouldn't be doing it like this, shouldn't be doing it like that. And okay, what you tend to see is 2 different strategies can work well, 2 different strategies can work badly. It's not about right or wrong. What it's about is anything can work if you put enough energy into it. But it's what it's fundamentally going to be doing for you. Is the project ultimately to elevate the voice of the learning and development team or the HR function, or is it there to drive real return on investment for the business? And I think fundamentally, that's my advice. Lean into return on investment for the business, not learning return on investment of did they enjoy my session? If I'm worth my salt, they should have enjoyed my session anyway. It's just an indicator of my performance. But actually the operational KPIs where you asked for sales growth, where you asked for customer service improvements, these are the metrics, and work with the business and make them accountable for the data that you need in order to demonstrate true return on investment.
Yeah, love that. Thinking about, taking it to the long-term goal rather than just the now goal as such.
Exactly. And the Kirkpatrick model of return on investment has even accepted that it had to change as well. They flipped the pyramid on their head, I think, a couple of years ago. Whereas, it started with the in-classroom kind of happy sheets of, are happy people, with the session. Ultimately, when you're going through a change process, a lot of people aren't happy with the change. So if you're measuring me based on people's happiness, sometimes the message is at odds with people's happiness. It's coming. AI is coming. You got to get behind it, and I'm going to help you do that. But this might feel a little bit uncomfortable. So because they're a little bit uncomfortable, actually, there's less priority kind of on the happy sheets. And actually, why are we implementing AI? And that is the question. Not because everyone's touting it as a buzzword, but what is AI fundamentally going to do for you as an organization? For me as a learning professional, it's going to reduce the build time. It's going to speed up my go-to-market on the basis that I've got my quality control right. So what does it therefore do for your organization when you're bringing it in, or you're bringing it in because everyone's talking about it?
Yeah. When you reflect on this conversation we've just had, Bob, what What's the message that you want the listeners to take away from this?
I think there's no one size fits all. Don't be blinded by kind of short-term kind of contracts that will use the same boilerplated framework from their last organisation. I've been through many contractors that are telling me they're selling me the world, but they've had to redact the previous company's name from the documentation they're sharing. A true learning professional will hear your business, hear your values, and challenge you, and that's what you want. In my opinion, again, that's all it is. So if it's that lasting message, it's don't be blinded by expense. Don't be blinded by kind of the jazzy learning management system. Understand what it's doing for you, why you want it, why you need it, and why you're bringing these teams on, because they can do so much for you, but you've got to understand what it is they want to do for you.
Yeah, love that. Bobby, thank you. Just so if people are listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, people can find you on LinkedIn mainly, right? Bobby Mann.
Yeah, absolutely. Find me on LinkedIn. Always happy to chat. Got plenty of time on my hands at the moment, so feel free to reach out, give me a call, and just say, I think you're full of rubbish, Bobby. This is what I think, and I'll take the challenge.
Yeah, Bobby, love the debate. So, look, mate, I appreciate it. It's nice to have a friend on here and have so much insight and knowledge being shared. I hope everybody listening has enjoyed that as well, as much as I have. Next week, I've got Lizzie on, who is a coach. We're going to look at different kind of performance metrics around leadership and human first leadership. So keep an eye on that. Come to that if you're interested in leadership coaching or leadership and how we improve. Otherwise, Bob, thank you so much again. Stay where you are. But in the meanwhile, have a lovely weekend, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.